my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. Today's episode is in partnership with Needed. The prenatal vitamin industry is failing us, leaving 95% of us depleted during one of the most nutritionally demanding times in our life. There's overwhelming evidence that higher standards of nutrition will improve fertility, birth outcomes, and the trajectory of life. Despite this, most prenatal vitamins only provide bare minimum nutrition. Needed goes way beyond bare minimums with products that can fully meet the needs of our minds, bodies, and babies. Needed's radically better nutritional system is third-party tested and rigorously developed with the endorsement of over 10,000 women's health experts. In addition to their prenatal multivitamins and pre- and probiotics, I am obsessed with their cognitive support supplement, which helps with brain fog, which I know is such a struggle when you're postpartum. A new exciting product from Needed is their Prenatal Choline Plus. Choline is super important for baby's brain development during pregnancy and breastfeeding. It also helps with your mood and metabolism, and it's a bulky ingredient, so it's hard to get enough that you need into your prenatal vitamins. So this separate one is going to get you to the 91% of your daily value versus most prenatals that only have about 1/10. So go over to Needed and check out how you can bundle that with your prenatal vitamins, and it's a really exciting new product that they're offering. At this point, I've talked to so many Birth Hour listeners who have discovered Needed through the podcast, and I love hearing the feedback that they're feeling better during pregnancy since starting with Needed's prenatal vitamins. Needed has all your needs covered from preconception to postpartum and beyond. Needed also simplifies things by bundling core products into easy and flexible monthly plans. You can use the code BIRTHHOUR for 20% off your first order and up to 40% off monthly plans at thisisneeded.com. Since this discount applies to your first order only, I always recommend going with one of the plans for the best value. At the end of this episode, I talked to Ryan, co-founder of Needed, about their recent IRB study results and what makes their products really stand out. So stay tuned for that conversation at the end of this episode. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another great way to be part of the Birth Hour community is by supporting us over on Patreon. So by pledging your support each month at the $5 a month level, you can get access to all of our archived episodes, so over 800 additional episodes not in the main podcast feed, as well as our private Facebook group that has such a great backlog of information. Just using that search bar, you can get almost any question answered, and you're going to find really supportive people there that are going to become your friends. And in addition to that, we do monthly Zoom calls. Just go over to patreon.com/Birth Hour and become a Patreon member and come see what it's all about. It's just $5 a month. You can get an even bigger discount. If you want to do an annual membership, you'll see that option there. And there's also an option to get it as a gift. So if you have a friend or a mother-in-law or somebody asking you what they can get you to help you prepare for baby, maybe you want a Birth Hour Patreon membership so that you can listen to more and more birth stories and find great community. So again, head over to patreon.com/Birth Hour to get started with that. Today's birth story guest is Mariam, and she has 2 birth stories to share. The first was an unexpected cesarean birth, and the second was a home birth. All right, let's hear from Mariam. Hi, Mariam. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm excited to get to your stories, but before we do that, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, so my name is Mariam. I live in Washington State with my partner, Meek. We live just south of Seattle. We have 2 kids. We have our daughter, Layla, who's 2.5 years old, and then our son, Malik, who is 3.5 months.
All right, we're going to hear both stories today. So let's start with finding out you were pregnant with Layla or getting pregnant, wherever you want to start.
Yeah. So with Layla, that pregnancy was very much a surprise. So my partner and I met in March, and then by June of 2022, I was pregnant. So it was very quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of joke that, like, if you're familiar with the show 90 Day Fiancé, where it's like fast tracking engagement and marriage, we were like 90 days in pregnant. So I am somebody who's always had very predictable periods. Like my start date usually just varies a couple days. So when I found out I was pregnant with her, it was a Saturday. I should have started like midweek. And I remember just being very tired, like tried to wake up around 11, couldn't wake up, went back to bed, woke up again at 2 and was just like, oh my gosh, I'm still really exhausted. Like, what's going on? And I kind of just had a feeling like, okay, I think I need to go take a test. So went to the pharmacy, bought a test, came back home, took it, and it was just super positive immediately. And I remember feeling like scared, excited, worried, just because it was so much quicker than I anticipated it happening. And so, after like crying and composing myself, I ended up calling my partner Meek and I was like, hey, I have some big news for you. I'm pregnant. And thank God he reacted in such a excited way, because he was like, you're pregnant. And he was so excited. And he owns a barber shop. So like all the barbers heard him say that and they were all excited. And it just made me feel like, okay, yeah, this is a good thing. Like, it's okay. Like, this is okay. And he's going to be with me and we're all going to be fine. So yeah, that made me feel so much better. So yeah, that was kind of how I found out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like when it's a surprise, sometimes the planning for the birth and all that looks a little different because it takes a while to even wrap the head around being pregnant. But how did you feel through your pregnancy?
Yeah, so through my pregnancy, like you said, like it was just surprising to me that I was even pregnant. And so, and I'm very much somebody who doesn't always, like, my mom never loved taking us to the doctor all the time. So it was always kind of like, if I can try to make myself feel better myself, I'll do that first before I go to the doctor. So going to the doctor all the time for this was like kind of a shock. And, I also had a couple things that happened in the very beginning of the pregnancy where, like, at about 5 or 6 weeks, I had abnormal bleeding. And so I actually thought that maybe I was going to lose the pregnancy. And my clinic was really good at like getting me in, and they did the HCG level testing and everything looked good there. And then they even like scheduled me for an ultrasound, which, like, looking back was just really reassuring, because as soon as I just saw the baby on the ultrasound, even though like at that point it was just like a little circle, and they heard the heartbeat and I saw it just made me feel so much like, okay, yeah, this is real. This is happening. Everything's okay. And I remember like crying and just kind of being like, okay, yeah, I didn't realize how much I really wanted to be a mom until that almost didn't happen because of the bleeding.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then another thing that ended up happening was in the beginning when they do all of the blood, all of those different panel testings, the doctor had said that she thought I had thalassemia, and I had never heard of that before. And nobody in my family has ever talked about it. So when she confirmed that I did have it, she had me and my partner go to a genetic specialist, and the genetic specialist was able to explain that I don't have thalassemia, but I'm a carrier for it. So they wanted my partner to get checked as well to see if the baby could possibly have it. And it just is essentially a blood disorder where you have less than normal amounts of hemoglobin. So if we both had it, it would mean like the baby would possibly need to have like blood transfusions. But thankfully, he wasn't a carrier, so the baby didn't end up having it, which was really great to hear.
Yeah. And your doctor thought you were a carrier for it just based off of your genetic tests or your blood work?
Yeah, so based off the blood work, she said my red blood cells were smaller than normal.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why like it was so confusing with me with the terminology because they were saying I had it.
Mm-hmm.
The genetic doctor said I was just a carrier, and then it was like I didn't have any of the symptoms, and I still don't to this day and never had. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to just take the genetic doctor's word and say carrier. I think she knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd have to both be carriers for the baby to have a chance of having it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a little bit of a hiccup. I know anything with genetic testing and stuff can be so stressful because there's a lot of waiting and uncertainty.
Yeah. And you just really don't want, like, I don't think anybody likes hearing that something's not like quote unquote normal. You know,
Right.
it just adds a lot of stress and anxiety that is, like you said, you have to just sit and wait with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Anything else come up for you during pregnancy?
Yeah. So I've always been somebody who has restless leg syndrome, like without pregnancy.
Mm.
And normally, like if I just go to bed, it will subside. But during pregnancy, it just ramped up. Like I could not find relief. And it mostly started kicking in probably like the second trimester and then was just awful until I ended up having the baby. And I remember bringing it up to my doctor and saying, you know, is there anything we can do about this? And he was just kind of like, no, you just have to live with it. And so when I got pregnant the second time and I brought that up with my midwife, like she was like, no, you don't have to just live with it. So if anybody is dealing with that, you don't have to just live with it. Like there are some things you can do that might help it out. But yeah, it was definitely pretty miserable at night. It disrupted the sleeping, which I feel like once you're in that third trimester, you're already having a hard time sleeping anyways. So that wasn't very fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those symptoms too that just makes you kind of feel like you're going insane a little bit because it's such a like annoying symptom and feeling. Yeah, so that's not fun.
100%. And people don't really understand it. They're like, what do you mean your legs are bothering you? I'm like, they just are, trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then what about what type of birth you were planning for and what you did to plan for it?
Yeah, I had never really thought about birth, to be honest. Never put a lot of like research or anything about it. Like all of the women in my family have had just vaginal births, no complications. And so I just thought that was going to be my experience. And I also was going to a smaller clinic that outsourced to one of the bigger hospitals here. So again, didn't even really think about like the care I was receiving, just was kind of going through the steps. So basically for birth, I just knew that I wanted to have a vaginal birth, and that was kind of my biggest goal.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else from pregnancy you want to share? You want to go ahead and start with the birth story?
Yeah, I can start with the birth story.
Okay.
So I very much thought that I was going to go like past 40 weeks just based off of everything I had read. So I was like 37 weeks and 5 days, and it was a weekend, and I was just doing like my regular cleaning. And my partner was like, you know what? It seemed like you're doing the nesting that they said in the videos. And I was like, I'm not nesting. Like, this is just weekend cleaning. But lo and behold, he was totally right, because that's what was happening. So it was a Sunday night, and it was the end of the night, and I all of a sudden like felt a lot of like liquid, like something like leaking in my underwear, and I was like, what is that? Like it didn't feel like pee. So I went in there, I like investigated. I was like, okay, it doesn't smell like pee. It didn't feel like pee. Like, I don't know what this is, but it's definitely liquid. And ended up asking my mom and a friend, like, hey, what was it like when your water broke? And they both said that they kind of had like the stereotypical like movie water break where it was just a big gush. So I decided, okay, I'm going to call the night doctor and see, because I feel like something's happening, but I'm not quite sure what's happening. And so explained to them about the leakage, and they were like, okay, well, maybe you lost your mucus plug. Like, you can just go back to sleep, maybe wear like a panty liner, and just keep an eye on it. So that was what I did. Although like it was actually more like a regular pad, because the amount of water I was leaking, I would have to change like every couple hours because it was a lot. And so about like midnight or so, I started feeling crampy, and I didn't realize that was contractions starting to happen. And so that Monday, I decided I wasn't going to go to work because I just had a feeling something was happening, and told my partner, like, I don't think you should go to work. Let's see what's going on. And then I, at the time, was doing pelvic floor physical therapy. And she had shown me a couple of stretches to do. So I was like doing some of the hip opening stretches. And in one of those stretches, it just like gushed even more liquid, like threw my clothes onto the mat. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, something's going on. So again, called the clinic, let them know what was happening. And they suggested, okay, well, maybe you should just go into the hospital, have them check you out. And if anything, they'll have you come home or you might be able to stay. And so that was around 10 in the morning on Monday. We packed up, already had the hospital bags and everything ready to go, which was so nice because you don't know what you're doing in those times. And everything just feels so confusing. So we went, and I remember like in the car, just already not feeling very comfortable because the contractions they weren't necessarily, they just felt like a really bad period cramp still, but like starting to feel uncomfortable. I started to feel uncomfortable in certain positions. And so when we got to the hospital, like I said, my clinic outsourced. So they had told me I would know a doctor. There would be one of the doctors that I would know on call and that the hospital would have my information. And they didn't have any of my information. It was just like a random person that popped up from the street and was having a baby. That made things a little bit more frustrating. And also, I feel like was a factor in the type of care that I received, just because nobody really knew my story. So it felt like I was just kind of like another person or like a transaction versus like somebody like really caring about me. So yeah, ended up getting put into the labor and triage. And at first she couldn't find the fluid. And then like as soon as I moved, more came out and she was like, oh yeah, that's definitely amniotic fluid. So they had me stay, and then she had asked if I wanted, I can't remember if it was like a Foley balloon or one of those balloon types. And I was like, no, that's okay. I'm fine. Because she said I was 1 centimeter. So I told her if anything, I would probably just take Pitocin. And I wasn't very well educated on like Pitocin and epidurals together, or even just Pitocin itself. My older sister, she had 2 unmedicated births and had to be induced both times for medical reasons. And so I was like, oh, you know what? If she did it on Pitocin, like I can probably do it on Pitocin. And I know I more than likely want an epidural. So I'll just take the Pitocin when that gets offered. So we ended up going to the room, and I was laboring pretty well by myself. Like I was dilating like 1 centimeter an hour. So by 3 centimeters, they had told me that I was basically on a clock because of the water breakage, and asked if I wanted to start the Pitocin. And I said, yeah, let's do it. I just wanted to make sure that everything was going the way that they wanted it to go. So I ended up taking the Pitocin, and a lot of my labor was in my back. So that was kind of like, now I know that she was sunny side up, but at the time I didn't know she was in a bad position. So ended up going to the bath, which was great that I was able to go into the bathtub and labor a little bit there, except for since I didn't sleep the night before, being in the bath just made me so tired. And so afterwards, I got out of the bath and I asked them to check me again. They said I was at 6 centimeters, and that was probably like about 5 p.m. that day. And I was like, okay, you know what? That's good enough for me. Like I'd like to have the epidural. So ended up having the epidural. And at first it worked really well on both sides, but as like the night progressed, it really was only working on my left side. So I could kind of feel a lot of the pain in my back on the right. And still, I continued to progress about like 1 centimeter an hour, or like 1 centimeter every 2 hours, until probably like 10, 11 p.m. All of a sudden it was like they kept coming to check me, and I was at 9, and I was at 9 centimeters. And they kept saying, okay, well, you're still at 9. They were asking me if I felt pushy, and I said no. And again, because like my water had broke, they were concerned about infection, but because it's also a hospital where there's residents, it was like, it just seemed like everybody was doing the cervical checks for me. Like it was the doctor, it was the residents. So it was kind of confusing where it was like, you're worried about infection, but everybody's checking me. And I didn't know then that I could say no to some of those checks, which looking back, I probably would have because it was just a lot. Then about 7 in the morning when they started doing the shift change and I still hadn't progressed past 9. And like the baby and I were both doing really fine. And they said, okay, well, at this point, like I think you need to consider other options because you're not making any more progress. And I had never thought that a C-section would ever happen. I don't know what I thought led to C-sections, but I didn't think it was that. And so when they said that, I was just shocked and also like became like really emotional. I remember I was like crying. They said, we'll give you 1 more hour and then we'll come back and see how you're doing. And so I just kind of knew that if I hadn't made any progress in like that 8+ hours to the extra centimeter, I just knew that I wasn't going to make it in the last hour. And I had even asked, like, is there any way I can like deliver this without a C-section? And they said, no, because we don't want to potentially harm your cervix. Like you have to be 10 centimeters. So I knew that I had to do the C-section, but I was not happy about it. And so there was a moment where they had the OB head doctor come in and like all of the team talking to me about how this was necessary, it was going to be okay. And it just kind of felt in that moment like I was bullied. Like I knew I didn't have any other options, but it was also where maybe if I had had more of a connection with some of the providers, they would have fought a little bit harder for me because, like I said, I wasn't having any problems. My daughter wasn't having any type of decels or issues. Like we were both doing great. We just needed more time and like positioning help. So I eventually consented to the C-section. And then I just remember like everybody getting everything ready. My partner was excited. I was still crying. Like I cried all the way to the OR. So much so that like I felt like once I was getting into the OR, I was like starting to hyperventilate. And I remember telling like the anesthesiologist, like, I can't breathe. Like I need air tubes. Like I can't breathe. Like it was just, I was so scared. Like I'd never had surgery before like that. And it was just something I really didn't want. And they kind of dismissed me. And then I told my partner, I was like, I can't breathe. Like I need you to tell them I can't breathe. And so he told the anesthesiologist like she needs help breathing. So they eventually gave me like some tubes to breathe through my nose. And then I remember them asking like, can you feel this? If not, we're going to get started. And I couldn't feel it. And then I remember them starting the procedure and like my daughter coming out like really quick. I didn't realize how quick the babies come out with C-sections. And so she came out. I remember them showing her to me above the curtain, but I was just still so disappointed. Like I just couldn't be happy that I had a baby, which might sound kind of, I don't know, that might sound weird because, you know, she was a healthy baby, but I just was so disappointed that this was how it was going. And I remember they went and took her to the warmer and I told my partner, I was like, please go with her, like make sure she's okay, make sure everything's good. And didn't get the opportunity to have skin to skin, which was like almost like something I had dreamt about and you see all the time. And like once I didn't have it, I realized even more how much I wanted that. They brought her to me and she was like all bundled up. And I just remember like I didn't even really want to be around her yet. Like I didn't want to touch her. I didn't want to hold her, not in the state that I was in, because that was when they started to like close me up. So then as they're closing me up, I just remember them telling me like I was going to feel a lot of pressure. And I just felt like I felt more pressure than I should have. So I was still like crying and told the anesthesiologist, like, I'm like in a lot of pain. Like I really need help. Like this isn't okay. I remember him giving me more medication. And then after that, I remember waking up and then they were trying to have me breastfeed my daughter. So that was how the birth went. It was very, for me, it was like really traumatic. I was really sad that it went the way that it did.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you were saying about the way you felt I've heard them many times on the podcast, so I don't think you're alone in that. It's definitely takes time to kind of wrap your head around what happened and to bond and all of that. So
yeah.
How was your hospital stay and then going home postpartum?
Yeah, so the hospital stay, I feel like my mama bear instinct kicked in immediately because I just wanted everybody to leave us alone. Like, I know it's their job to make sure that you're okay and the baby's okay, but it was just like the amount of pricking they were doing to her foot because she was slightly jaundiced, and then she didn't pass the hearing test. And I was like, oh my God, like I need to get out of here. Like we need to leave and be in a better space. And so she did eventually pass the hearing. Like that was fine. It was just more that she had the fluid in her ears still. But I just remember I wanted to be as far away from the hospital as I could because I was just responding to like how it was very traumatic for me. So like being there didn't make me feel good or my partner feel good. So as soon as we were able to leave, I was happy about that. But then their issue was more like she had lost like 12% of her birth weight instead of the 10%. So then there was like a little bit of pressure from my doctor to have her take formula, but my milk hadn't came in yet. And I was like, no, I don't, like, I already lost the vaginal birth experience that I wanted. Like, I'm not going to lose this opportunity to breastfeed because this is all I have left. And so, even though he had recommended I give her formula, she was like 4 or 5 days old. I just knew I needed a chance to have my body like make the milk. And then later that day, my milk ended up coming in. So I'm really glad in hindsight that I listened to myself because the breastfeeding experience for me was really painful. Like I ended up learning that she had a tongue tie and we did get that revised and it made it much better. But in the beginning, it was a lot and I didn't expect it to be so painful. But like I said, it was like the only thing I had left that I felt like would allow me to bond with her. So I did not want anybody to take that experience away from me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, anything else you want to share from that experience? You're going to move on to the second baby.
So I think the only thing I have to share is that like from the day that she was born, I just very much knew I wanted to have a different type of birth experience. And it really kicked in my desire to like dive into the birth world, do a lot of research. That's when I found your podcast. That's when I found the HBAC link and just hearing that this wasn't something that only happened to me because again, like all of the women in my family and my friends, like everybody had vaginal births. And so I was very much the outlier and it felt very lonely. So to know that like this wasn't just a me thing, like other women have gone through something similar too, it made me feel so much better. And it also just like ignited my desire to really be intentional with the team I would have for my second birth and also make sure that I was really well informed because I wanted to make sure that I had more knowledge and power with the second pregnancy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned you found podcasts. What else did you do to make plans differently for your second?
Yeah, so was listening to the podcasts endlessly. Also heard about the book, How to Heal from a Bad Birth. I know that's not the whole title, but it's something along those lines. Started reading that. Also made sure to start contacting. I knew I didn't want to have another hospital birth, so I decided to contact like birth centers earlier before I even got pregnant. It was like the summer of 24, and I knew that we were going to start trying soon. And then because I do live in Washington State, I ended up learning that because I had a C-section, I wasn't allowed to have a birth at a birth center because of state legislation. So that meant I could either have a birth at a hospital or have a birth at home. And so that was a little bit of a shock to me because I never envisioned having a home birth. But I also knew that I was willing to try the new experience to make sure that I had a better birth experience because although like the home birth always felt like very hippy dippy to me, I was like, well, there's got to be something to it because women have been doing it like that for a long time. People still have home births today. And then the more research I did about home birth, the more I was like, actually, this is definitely my vibe. Like this is totally what I'm looking for. So
yeah, especially as someone who, like you said, didn't really love going to the doctor a lot and stuff like that. I think, if you've never been in a hospital before and then your first time is when you're supposed to have like oxytocin flowing and stuff, it can be a little overwhelming or a lot overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. So lo and behold, I didn't even know that I loved home birth until I had one. So,
all right. Well, how did this pregnancy go? Anything new come up or different?
Yeah. So in terms of like I said, we knew that we wanted to, we planned for this baby. So the road to getting pregnant I was a little bit worried about it just because I was on a birth control after I had my daughter, but it was supposed to be the breastfeeding friendly birth control so that you can still breastfeed. And so I was a little bit worried about if that was going to affect us getting pregnant, but it didn't, thankfully. So I ended up stopping that in July. And then by the end of August, I was already pregnant, and it was so quick that my partner was like, I don't believe you, when I showed him the positive test because the line was faint. And I was like, no, they say if you see even a little bit, it's pregnant. And so I had to test a couple times for him to believe me. And then he was like, okay, yeah, I guess we're doing this again. So that was kind of anticlimactic compared to the first time, I guess, because I was so excited and he was in disbelief. But then, eventually we were both like, okay, this is happening and we're excited. And then for the pregnancy, I had the restless leg syndrome again, but that was something that I brought up to my midwife, who suggested taking calcium and magnesium before bed. And that had helped for a while. But then both in my first pregnancy and in the second pregnancy, I also had iron anemia. So the iron pills helped with the restless leg syndrome. And then there was one other, supplement that another client of hers had taken that was a turmeric combination. And between all four of those, and then me walking religiously at night helped the restless leg syndrome. It was not nearly as bad as it was with my first.
That's good.
Yeah, so it still existed, but I could actually sleep. And that was the most important thing to me.
Yeah, awesome.
And then the only other thing that was kind of a scare was at the anatomy scan. They had told me that the cord insertion was a marginal cord insertion. So I obviously was not happy to hear that. Again, I don't think you ever want to hear anything's not normal. So I go down the Google train and concerned about what that means. And then my doulas and my midwife are both like, no, you don't need to worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. As long as the baby grows, everything's going to be fine. So it was hard to sit with that because there was obviously nothing I could do. But in that ultrasound, they also told me he was in the 90th percentile for growth. So he was doing well. It was just not an ideal spot for the cord to be.
Okay. But nothing that was going to affect your plans for a home birth.
Yeah, nothing. He had said I might be considered high risk because of it, at the ultrasound. And so that made me obviously really upset because I was like, no, I don't want to do this again. I've put so much energy into this home birth. I really hope that I can still have that. Mm-hmm. So when my midwife had said, no, it's not something that you should be worried about. We'll just keep monitoring it. And if something comes up, it comes up. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And so that attitude was totally what I needed to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have that calming presence for sure. Okay, well, what else from pregnancy, preparing for a home birth?
Yeah, so the only other thing I did differently was I definitely was a lot more active this time. I felt the urge to be active in my first pregnancy, but I wasn't as active as I should have been. And so this time I made sure to be really active. And I also started having like pelvic pain around like 5 months. So I had heard of other VBAC moms doing chiropractic care. And so I found a Webster certified chiropractor and started seeing him at about 5 months, and continued seeing him all the way until I had the baby. And I think that was probably one of like that, and being active was probably like the two best things that I ever could have done, because my baby was in the optimal position this time, and the contractions, I could tell it was different. So that was highly recommend the chiropractor. That was the best.
Yeah. I haven't really talked to anyone who like regretted going to a chiropractor. So I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about how labor started.
Yeah. So with my daughter, like I had her, she was born exactly at 38 weeks. So I knew that was not like most people can go up to 40. So it was kind of hard for me once I hit 38 weeks to be like, okay, yeah, like this is normal. It's okay for me to be pregnant still. There were like some days where I felt like maybe labor was starting, but then like it would I'd feel like a little bit crampy at like 2 or 4 p.m. And then by like 7 or 8, it would just fizzle out. And I was like, yeah, no, this isn't it yet. So the night that it actually started, it was about 12:30 at night. And again, like from everything I heard, I always heard that most women start at night when the older sibling is asleep. So that definitely happened for me. And I remember being like, okay, I think this is it. Like, I feel like this is it. And also being like, everybody says you need to rest. So I need to rest. I need to try and sleep. And I just remember I couldn't sleep. Like, I was just really uncomfortable. I tried to sleep like the bed with my pregnancy pillow on the floor, like on the ball. I just couldn't really rest. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to start like doing the timing with these. And so started timing them. My partner was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I think this is it. And he was like, okay, well, I'll stay up with you and help you time. So we were timing, and they were definitely like, the contractions were definitely coming and they were getting more painful, but like I wasn't reaching the pattern that my midwife wanted me to be at before I called her. So what I did was around 5 o'clock that morning, I ended up calling my doula team and just letting them know like, hey, this is what's happening. I think this is labor. And they had like this type of concoction with like a bunch of different things with like Benadryl, magnesium, and like electrolytes that they had suggested I take to see if the labor would fizzle out. To see, like, I guess that was their way of determining if it was like false labor or true labor. But because I was so tired in my first labor, I knew that I wanted to have all the energy I could get. So like that didn't really sit well with me. And then that day I also was supposed to have a midwife appointment at 9 in the morning. So I had let my midwife know about the contractions, and she had called me and she said, yeah, you don't need to come in. Like, it sounds like you're definitely in labor. And I told her about the advice from the doulas, and she was like, no, I don't think that you should take that. Like, I can tell that this is real labor. I feel like you need to just like listen to your body and also just let them know when you need their support. And so it was really nice for me to get that validation from her, because one, I feel like I didn't have a doula in my first birth. So although they tell you when to let them know when to come, like it still was like hard to know when I should let them know when to come. So by her telling me like, stay true to yourself, listen to your body, and if you need them to be there with you, like tell them to be there with you. And so that kind of gave me the courage to just say, you know, I talked to my midwife, she suggested this, and I'll just let you guys know when I need you. And they responded really well to it. And they were like, okay, yep, just let us know when you need us. And so ended up letting them know like an hour later, like, okay, yeah, this is getting really hard for me. Like, can you please come help and support? And it was a team of doulas. So one of them, the one on call, came and helped. And when she got to my house, I felt a little bit more relief, because like at least in the hospital, you have like the nurses and the staff kind of like guiding you through everything, where like when you're at home, you're just doing it by yourself, and it kind of feels like I should be doing something, but what should I be doing? But I don't really know what to be doing. And like, even though I had done so much research, I still was like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? So her coming and then just like guiding us on how to set up the birth pool, and then just helping me like do different positions to help open the pelvis. And then we did the mile circuit, and I had explained to her like where I was feeling the contractions, and my biggest thing was just the baby being in a good position. And she said, no, based off what you're saying, like you feeling everything in the front, that means it sounds like he's in a good position, like you should be okay. And so things started to ramp up at about like 3 p.m. Like it had been over 12 hours of labor for me. I was like starting to get a little bit restless, like was getting eager to like have the baby be here. I knew I was like, the pain was just starting to like add up for me. And so we sent the contraction pattern to my midwife. She called me and she was like, okay, like it looks like you're doing good, but like doesn't seem like you're ready for me yet. Like just keep going, and I'll like get back in touch with you in about an hour. So then she like called back in an hour. Again, like my contractions they weren't lasting for a minute. They were like 30 seconds long, and they were coming like every 1 to 2 minutes. So it wasn't what she wanted to see, or it was like every 2 to 3 minutes. But when she called that second time and she asked if I needed her to be there with me, I said, yes, I 100% need you to be here with me. Like this is becoming a lot for the pain. And so now that she was on the way, I had asked the doula, I was like, do you think I can get in the birth pool? And she's like, yeah, let's get in. So I got in the pool, and I just remember feeling like so much better with the hot water in the pool. Like everything just felt way better. It was still like really painful, but it was just, I felt like I could relax a little bit more. So then was laboring in there, and then my midwife came with her team. And then when they came, I knew just from my first birth, I didn't want to have a lot of intervention, but I also really was like, I need to know where I'm at. Like I've been doing this for over 12 hours and I'm getting really tired. So I asked her to do a cervical exam, and I said, but can you please not tell me the number? Just like tell me if you think I'm in a good spot. And so she checked me and she said, yep, you know what? You are doing really great, and you've got a bulging bag of waters. And so that just made me feel so much better. I was like, oh, thank God, like I'm doing great. And then just hearing that the bag of waters was bulging, I was like, okay, that he's got to be coming soon. Like this has got to be over soon. And so labored for like another hour. And at that point, like my sister who lives in a different city, she had like flew in to be with me. And that was the best, because I didn't realize how much I wanted her to be there until she was there. And so I'm just like laboring in the tub, and I've got like all my team kind of just like waiting and watching with me. That was something I didn't really realize would make me feel like I wanted the support, but it made me feel like a fish in a fishbowl. It just was like, it felt almost like a lot of pressure. Like I'm in a lot of pain, and these people are here to help me, but they're not experiencing it like I'm experiencing it. Mm-hmm. And also like they're all waiting for what I'm waiting for, which is for the baby, and he's still not here yet. So it just was, I didn't think about how like that would make me kind of feel a little bit, I don't know. It was a weird feeling. Like I was thankful for the support, but I also felt it was hard for me to stay in the labor mindset because I was a little distracted.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really know until you're in it how you're going to feel. Like some people love like people all around them and lots of touch. And I was like you, I felt like a mammal going into a cave. Like I just wanted to be like in a dark corner of the room. No one else needed to be there except for my husband giving me counter pressure. But yeah, it's tricky when it's your first birth because you really don't know how you're going to be in labor.
Yeah. And I soon found out that was not like having a lot of people there for support was great, but not to be watched. Like I didn't like that part.
Yeah. Were you able to voice that in the moment or just kind of thinking it in your head?
It was kind of something I realized like as the labor kept going, like after I got out of the birth pool, because like the birth pool felt great, but then like we had filled it to the top and there was really not much more hot water we could put in. And I also was feeling restless being in there just like because of everybody kind of watching me. But then also I felt like I needed to do something else because I had been in there for so long. And although like I had moments where I felt like I needed to bear down, things weren't progressing as quickly as I had hoped. So once I got out of the pool is kind of when I was like, okay, yeah, this feels better to not have as many people around me.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I did get out of the pool. I ended up, they suggested I go to the toilet to try and dilate more. I did that for 30 minutes, but it was really painful. And before I did that, I did ask my midwife. I asked her she thought it was a good idea to break my water, and we went through the good and the bad of that. And I decided, okay, let's just break the water, because again, the pain I was in a lot of pain, and it was I was ready to see some more progress. So we ended up breaking my water. I then went to the toilet to dilate more, and the pain was just ramping up without that water being there. So then was labored on the toilet, then went into the shower and labored with the birth stool in the shower. But ultimately, what I really wanted was to lay down. And so I ended up going to lay down on the bed. And for whatever reason, I only could lay on my left side. Just was too painful. And then I just was through the contractions. I never felt pressure that other women have talked about, but instead it was more of, I felt like I needed to push through the pain. And so I was bearing down and pushing while in that position on the bed, side lying. And as I was doing that, it was okay, yeah, I'm we're pushing, the baby, it's time to push. And I remember my midwife being are you sure? Are you sure you feel like you're ready to push? And I was yeah, I this is what feels right now. And she didn't do another cervical exam just because I didn't want to risk any type of infection. So she was just really trusting in me and how I felt, which was really awesome. And so I ended up pushing for a little bit on my side. I remember feeling restless, do you guys see anything? Is anything happening? And they ended up I was can you bring me a mirror? I want to see. So they brought me a mirror. I couldn't really see and push with the mirror. So I ended up asking my sister, can you just take a video? Because at that point through the pushing, his head was going in and out so they could see it. And I feel for anybody who's had a C-section, you just don't believe that you're having a vaginal birth until you see the head. So I saw through the video that oh yeah, there is a head coming. I'm doing this. And that just made me feel okay, I'm progress is happening. This is happening. So then ended up needing to go to the bathroom. So I got up, went to the bathroom, and they had me have a Chuck's pad in between to not bleed everywhere. And on my way back to the bed, there was a bulge that kind of fell through my hands. And my midwife was ooh, what's that? And I then got back on the bed to push and kept pushing. And then I was just had this thought, because I had pushed on my side, on the birth stool, on all fours. But when I had just stood up to go pee is kind of when gravity really helped me get the baby down further. And so I was you know what? I said, can I push standing? And they were you can do whatever you want. And I was I want to push standing. So I stood up, was leaning on my partner, and was pushing. And then it was clear that progress was happening a lot quicker. And so they had asked him if he wanted to catch the baby. And he was yes, I want to catch the baby. Well, he hesitated, but then eventually decided to catch the baby. So then my sister came in, and she was the person helping support my body while I was standing. And she just was whispering in my ear, you got this, Mare, you're doing it. You're having the baby. Women have done this before you. You're doing so great. And it was just it was such a special moment for her to be saying those to me, because it was totally what I needed to hear. And in the loving, nurturing way that she is, because she's my big sister, it was just the best to hear it from her. And so ended up pushing a little bit more, and then I could feel the ring of fire happening. And it wasn't as painful or as burning, I guess, as I've heard other people describe it. Instead, I was more of oh my God, it was kind of relief for me, because I was yes, this is happening. I'm doing this. We're making progress. He's almost here. And so I just remember once I felt that ring of fire, I just did not wait for that next contraction. I just roared him out. I was like, I'm ready to be done. Like, let's get this baby out. So I just roared and pushed him out. And then, yeah, he was born. And I sat down and I was like, oh my God, it's over. Like, I can't believe it's over. And I remember like them putting him on my chest, and I thought that I would cry. And it was like between the adrenaline and then just being so happy that the pain was over, I didn't even cry that he was born. I was just like so happy that he was born, but it was like no tears came.
Yeah, I can totally relate to both I'm not waiting to push. I'm so ready for this to be done. And then, yeah, I was never, all three of my births, I was never crying until, my husband was always crying, but I was just like, I guess in shock still. I don't know. But
yeah, like, I thought the tears would come, and instead it was just more of like, yeah, like you said, the shock, the happiness that the pain was done. Yeah. So,
well, and you still have the placenta to get out. So like your work's not done. And what ended up happening with that cord insertion?
Yeah. So that was something that I had talked about with my team, where I was worried about hemorrhaging, because I later found out in my C-section I did hemorrhage. And my midwife said that I could do like active pain management, where like after the baby was born, they would give me Pitocin to help my uterus contract. And so I opted for that. So that was what we did. And the placenta was born like maybe 5 minutes after. Like it didn't take long at all for it to come out. And when it did come out, they actually noticed that there was a true knot in the cord. And I was like, oh my God, this kid, he was born at 8 pounds, 1 ounce. So like, despite the marginal cord insertion and despite a true knot, like he was just thriving with food. He was the big boy. So yeah, those were not factors at all for him, thankfully.
Yeah. And how was postpartum this time?
Yeah, postpartum was very different. I think I underestimated. Well, first, it was the best to be at home and be in my bed and not have like one thing I didn't like about the hospital was my blood pressure being checked all the time. So just to like already be home and be in the space that I wanted to be in was the best. But then it was kind of shocking that like after the team cleaned up, everybody left, and it was just like me and the baby and my partner. And I guess it was just shocking because it was like we resumed normal life like right away, where like when I had the hospital birth, because it was a C-section, like I was in the hospital for like 4 or 5 days. So there was like a little bit more of a transition before taking the baby home, where like with this, it was like, nope, you're home, you have the baby, welcome to your life, good job. And so I guess I was just a little bit, I didn't realize how much, I didn't think about like my daughter. Like I knew that we needed to continue everything we were doing and taking care of her. But then it was like, oh, I don't get to be there to take care of her because I'm with the baby. So having other people do those things for me was actually really hard because I wanted to be there with her. And so I didn't really think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard adjustment, especially when you're physically healing and literally cannot do a lot of the things that need to be done for a toddler.
Yeah. And thankfully, like I was worried about her meeting the baby, and she was just so happy to meet him. Like just immediately was like so kissy, so lovey. Like even to this day, like hasn't had any type of jealousy or sadness, especially because I've always been the one with her the most. And so I was kind of worried about her not getting as much of me as before. But really, like she transitioned so well. It was really me that was having the hard time not being with her.
Yeah, that sounds relatable for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have any resources you want to share?
Yeah. So, of course, your podcast, like that was my happiness every day. Like I loved it. And the Know Your Options course, I loved that too. I also, like I mentioned before, listened to the HBAC link, which was really nice. Also listened to the Happy Homebirth podcast, read, of course, the Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and then the book on how to heal from a bad birth. It's a longer title than that.
Yeah, we'll put it on the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
All right, we'll put all those things on the show notes. And then what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Probably just email, because I'm not on social media. So yeah, if you want to just reach out to me via email, it's just my last name with an M at gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Mariam.
Yeah, thank you, Bryn.
Now I'm going to talk to Ryan, co-founder of Needed, about their recent IRB study results and all of the great products from Needed. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast to chat with me about Needed again.
Bryn, I'm so excited to be back.
Awesome. Well, before we get into all of the new things happening over at Needed, can you just share with my listeners a little bit about who you are and your role at Needed?
Absolutely. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Needed.
All right. So I recommend Needed to my listeners, my followers on Instagram all the time. I've been using the products for over a year now. And I just really love that with your perinatal products, you really go beyond the bare minimum. And it's just really important, especially for the people in my audience, because we know that during the stages of life where you're growing babies and feeding babies are especially nutritionally demanding. So I love that you guys are addressing these nutrient deficiencies and talking about now that not all prenatal vitamins are created equally. And on that note, your team just released the results of an IRB study highlighting these differences between standard prenatal vitamins versus Needed. Can you just talk a little bit more about this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited. This has been a baby of mine for a while.
Yeah.
But basically, there is overwhelming evidence that proper nutrient levels can improve fertility, birth outcomes, and the trajectory of life for both mother and baby thereafter. Yet, as we all know, despite our little kind of communities, nutrition has not been front and center in the perinatal standard of care. And most prenatals on the market provide bare minimum nutrition support. We're designing and conducting studies to add to the clinical literature to unequivocally prove that women deserve more support, resources, and radically better nutritional care. We really just fundamentally think the evidence just cannot be ignored anymore, as the lack of nutritional support is really failing women and children. So our goal for this study specifically was to take a more comprehensive look at nutritional status in pregnancy. The study compared nutritional characteristics between women taking the Needed prenatal multi and a standard prenatal vitamin.
Okay.
We collected survey data and analyzed nutrient biomarkers, so nutrient levels actually in the blood themselves, in a diverse group of 235 adult pregnant women across 7 U.S. states. And what's really exciting and what you're hinting towards is that the results actually revealed quite striking insights into how maternal nutrition status differs by the type of prenatal vitamin a woman is taking during pregnancy. Specifically, we found that women taking the Needed prenatal multi had higher blood levels of key nutrients for pregnancy, including vitamin D, B6, selenium, and zinc, among a number of others. When we compared prenatal subgroups, we found that only the group of women taking the Needed multi had sufficient blood levels of vitamin D and vitamin B6 compared to the group taking the standard prenatal. And nutrients like vitamin D and B6 play key roles in pregnancy in supporting both maternal and baby health outcomes. So it's really exciting. And it's also important to reiterate that our study was diverse and the prenatal groups were comparable on several key factors outside of their prenatal vitamins. This is really important for the rigor of the study. So for example, 1/3 of the women in each group identified as a race ethnicity other than white, and women in both groups were in similar stages of their pregnancy.
Okay, and what does the IRB part mean?
The IRB is the Institutional Review Board, and they're basically a committee that reviews clinical research involving human subjects to ensure that certain ethical standards are met.
Okay. It's super important when studying pregnant women.
Super important when studying pregnant women, and in terms of showing proper kind of rigor and study design went into the methodology of how we conducted the research as well.
Right. So one thing that I thought was interesting is that a lot of this past studies weren't even done on pregnant women or even women. Oftentimes it was like based on white men as far as vitamin levels and things like that. So as you mentioned, these are really striking results. And what does this really mean for women in the trying to conceive or pregnancy or postpartum season of life? Like, what should we be taking away from this data?
You're right that sort of there is a lot of missing gaps in the research, though we also have found that there is a lot of really good research emphasizing the need for better nutrition at this stage of life. But overall, we see this study as adding to the growing body of evidence showing that, one, meeting nutritional needs through diet alone is very challenging in modern context. So supplementation is needed. Two, that most pregnant women in the U.S. fail to meet dietary recommendations for certain key nutrients that are very important for pregnancy, like vitamin D. And third, I think increased evidence that standard prenatals are really falling short in closing the gap between nutritional needs and dietary intake. And overall, we hope this study leads to more clinicians and moms advocating for the nutrition that is needed for a healthy pregnancy.
Yeah, and I've been sharing about this with my followers on Instagram from some of the data you guys are talking about. And one thing I thought was really interesting was the statistic about how few care providers are discussing nutrition with pregnant and postpartum women at all.
Yeah, that is absolutely striking. We found that nearly 80% of women reported receiving little to no nutritional advice from their OBGYN during their pregnancy care.
Yeah, and this is something that comes up on the podcast a lot because I feel like people really notice a difference when they have midwifery care versus OBGYNs, because nutrition is something that's talked about in these much longer prenatal appointments and things like that. So yeah, it's a big part of feeling good throughout pregnancy. And I know that one thing that Needed really focuses on as well is that it's not just during pregnancy, but also postpartum. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
We equate it in a lot of ways to nutritional depletion, and that a lot of the importance for this life stage is in avoiding depletion. So meaning when your body lacks the essential vitamins, minerals, or other nutrients that are really needed for optimal function. And depletion is not something that occurs only through pregnancy, but women are more vulnerable in critical life stages such as pregnancy and breastfeeding. So that postpartum stage that you mentioned right there. And a lot of the problem is that women go into pregnancy already depleted and then increase their depletion in growing baby, so end up in a pretty tough spot postpartum. There are many contributors to this depletion, from nutrient deficient soil and stress. And then the signs of depletion like brittle nails, fatigue, headaches, mood changes, thinning hair, constipation, dry skin, all sound pretty familiar to us, right? And really research suggests that up to 95% of women experience nutritional depletion even when they are on a prenatal vitamin.
Oh my gosh.
Depletion is, I think, a much bigger problem than we actually, have historically given it credit. And a lot of us, women just assume we have to feel these things, these signs of depletion, just as part of our, that's just the status quo. That's how it's supposed to be. And I think a lot of our sort of emphasis is showing that no, radically better is possible. There are ways to better support ourselves through nutrition to minimize those signs of depletion.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to someone recording their birth story, and they were saying how, they were super focused on their nutrition during pregnancy, and then it kind of fell to the wayside postpartum. And it's like especially if you're breastfeeding, it's taking a lot of energy and nutrients, and then you're also sleep deprived because you have a new baby. So the depletion, I think, like you mentioned, is just something we really need to focus on beyond pregnancy.
Yeah, and most care providers aren't really reminding folks. They think of it as like a prenatal, not a perinatal.
Right.
There are some postnatals that exist, but I think the use of them in that breastfeeding life stage that is actually more nutritionally intensive than pregnancy is a non-supported part of this life stage. And, where we see so many women really talking about that postpartum period being the most difficult. And I think being able to advocate and raise awareness to better support and how do we care for mom, not just care for baby during that stage is very important.
Yes, I'm just like nodding along to everything over here. So are there any other supplements that women should consider outside of a prenatal to help fight depletion?
Absolutely. So most prenatals and aren't included are vitamin and mineral blends. And there are many other nutrients that are supportive of combating nutrition. Unfortunately, we just don't think that there's a single product that can fully get you over the hill on depletion lack. So it needed what we are really focused on rather than just a single product, though we do hero our prenatal multi a lot, but really an emphasis on a system of products is most supportive. And for example, we do offer an omega-3 DHA EPA add-on. So DHA omega is often something that you probably do hear as part of taking that alongside your prenatal. And DHA and EPA are very supportive of a healthy pregnancy. Sometimes they are combined with a prenatal multi, but we often see that can lead to kind of lack of nutrient integrity or too low of doses. So we do think it is important to offer it as a separate product for that reason, but do advocate for that being added on to your system of products. And then there's a whole host of other products depending on needs. I personally really love our sleep support. Lack of sleep is a big contributor to depletion. And I also really love our breastfeeding safe cognitive support product. It's a product that really helps me sort of feel like me and try to do it all by being a working mom while still, breastfeeding and chasing after my kids. Being able to focus when I need to focus is a critical part of that.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of that one as well. So you guys offer several bundles and things like that with these add-ons. Where's the best place for people to start if they're trying to decide what's right for them?
Our website does help to guide you by sort of life stage or need, which is thisisneeded.com, or we're at Needed on Instagram. And we actually have a team of trained nutritionists and doulas as part of our customer support team. So they're eager and ready to help if you do want to sort of DM us or email us if you kind of get stuck on the website your own. So that's a great place to start. And then I'd also really recommend folks to go to thisisneeded.com/thrive to learn more about the prenatal study and the rigor that went into it and a lot more results beyond what we're able to share today.
Yes, it's so fascinating. And I'm the same way. Like I can't squeeze it all in to share on Instagram either. And so I'm like, please go check it out because it really is amazing what you guys were able to find out from this study. And I love that people are available in the DMs to help guide because I feel like it can be really overwhelming when choosing your prenatal. And starting with the main prenatal is obviously a great choice, but I know lots of people want to take advantage of these bundles too. So that's great to know that it's available to DM or email.
Yeah, I think we're here to help, and it's really a passion of a lot of members of the team to do so. So we're excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for chatting with me about all of this. It's always great to hear what you guys are up to, and I'm always happy to share with my listeners about Needed.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much again to Mariam for sharing her birth stories with us and to Needed for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR to save at thisisneeded.com. And if you want more information from today's episode, head over to thebirthhour.com and just search for Mariam's name in the search bar.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support.
And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.